Hey, I wanted to do a quick read through of a whole essay. I know we've looked at parts before, but a whole essay this time to give you kind of a feel of the overview as we start to work toward putting parts together and thinking about research. This should, kind of keep this in mind that this is where we're going eventually. So this is, let's see, this is Danielle Hansen's essay, Stigma Busters, Truths and Myths of Bipolar Disorder. And when we look at the essay itself, you can see she's got that APA format. So her headers, her title page, she's got an abstract. The whole thing ends with her references at the end. So that's, of course, what we're working toward the end. So let's take a look at this. Her abstract, and again, remember your abstract is something that you write once you're done writing the paper because it is just a summary. And you'll notice this is the only place where in Danielle's paper we'll find the use of I, the first person, and that is generally allowed in APA abstracts. But again, you'd want to ask a teacher because some of them are like no personal pronouns at all, and in which case we'd just get rid of the I think, I argue, whatever it is, and just go on with the rest of the sentence. So let's see what her abstract looks like. Stigmas are associated with bipolar disorder. Stigmas associated with bipolar disorder create several barriers in the lives of people who suffer from this condition. This paper discusses how they affect the perspectives of others and self, making it difficult for people who have a mental illness to seek treatment and support. Employment opportunities are restricted and workplaces become uncomfortable from the intolerance created by those stigma-influenced perspectives. I argue that it is essential that society takes action against stigma by preventing the spread of misinformation. Creating credible sources of information and proper support networks for those afflicted by psychiatric illnesses are ways to help minimize stigmas associated with bipolar disorder. If everyone does their part to reduce misinformation about medical conditions, then society can begin to improve the quality of life of those with bipolar disorder. Those who must battle bipolar disorder shouldn't have to endure stigma as well. And so you can see that just is overall what her paper's about and what her conclusions are. So again, you don't write it till the end, but it starts it off. And then keywords are easy. What topics did you talk about? She talked about bipolar disorders. She talked about mental illness. She talked about stigma, misinformation, psychiatric condition, and myths. So she just thinks about what are the main things I talked about and writes those down. All right, so that's abstract. One of the last things we'll do with this paper, but that's where we're going. So let's just start in with the paper. Mental illnesses such as bipolar disorder have accompanying social stigmas and false beliefs that make life even more difficult for those suffering from a mental affliction. Living with the pressures of a society that believes mental illness can be controlled with willpower alone, among other common myths, can discourage those with bipolar disorder to seek help and support. Without proper treatment and support, mental illness can worsen and lead to psychotic breaks, hospitalization, and even death. It is important that society takes action to prevent public stigma and misinformation about bipolar disorder and other mental illnesses, because those who suffer from bipolar disorder should not have to battle with that on top of the condition itself. So here she's just getting us into this, as with most essays, that introduction gets us in. And then she ends with, what is her, her main point, her thesis. And in essence, what is the answer to her question, or whatever her question has become as she's gone through our research, because sometimes as you research, it kind of shifts and morphs. So what is it she's found about what we can do in terms of, helping people with bipolar disorder? So that's her introduction. All right, then she's going to start into it. And of course, I'll kind of stop along the way as we go through citations and show you some things. So bipolar disorder is a mood disorder characterized by episodes of mania, hypomania, and depression. So now she got this definition from someone, and so she's got to tell us. She didn't use the author's name in the sentence itself, so we need to have the author, the date, and the location. And those are the three things we need to have for every in-text citation in general, right? Let me move our little guy. So this is from Writer's Reference, page 85, and basic, I mean, this is very basic, is, you think about what did you do in your text leading up to the information. Did you use the author's name? Or here, Danielle did not. And then, do you have page numbers or no page numbers? And in this case, she has a page number. So with this one, she didn't use the author's name, and she does have page numbers, so it's going to be over here. So this is pretty much the same. According to my teacher, bacon is the candy of meats. Wood. Oh, there's author. There's date. There's the section, or here we have author, date, and, oh, wait, paragraph. Oh, page numbers. I'm sorry. Right there. Author, date, location. So Danielle has author, date, location. Now this et al. Comes from having more than, let's see, what do we have? She did it for the first time, so she has 6 or more authors. And that's where you really want to remember with the APA section, whenever you're dealing with something, these first parts of how do you do these, the in-text, just be familiar with what's in this list so you can look it up real quickly. And again, you can use citation generators, but sometimes it takes more time to fix what they mess up than it does just to type it up. So here, 2 works, let's see, 6 or more authors. When we look at that, it's going to show us, here we go, 6 or more authors. We use this et al., which just means and everyone else, okay? So here, Danielle has author, date, location. Put those commas where they go and the periods where they go. All right, then she gives us the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and she's going to use this abbreviation later throughout her paper. So she goes ahead and puts the abbreviation in there, and we still have to have that date because they're the author and the date. So the National Alliance on Mental Illness, a mental health organization that provides public information and resources for those with a mental condition, states, the condition affects men and women equally, with about 2.6 of the U.S. population diagnosed with bipolar disorder and nearly 83% of cases classified as severe. And here we have the author, so it's NAMI, and we have the date, there's author date, and then here's our location. This is from a website, and it's a section. So when we look at this, here we go without page numbers. You can see we would put the section right there. So there's the title and then the word section in lowercase. The title of the section would have the major words capitalized. Despite how common this condition is, some myths are floating around causing stigmas that hinder the process of treatment and lower the quality of life for those who suffer from it. NAMI explains that a specific cause has not been found for bipolar disorder yet. However, there are a few factors that are believed to play a part in it. Genetics, stressful events, brain structure, and brain function may play critical roles in the development of this condition. And there you can see she's got overview section. Now, she didn't put the date here because right before, when she had used, this in her text, so it's not only in one of these in-text citations, but when she's used it in the word of her sentence, she's used the name of the author, whether it's an organization or a person. If there's no other source in between, and the only thing she's used is NAMI so far, then when you use their name again, you don't have to put the date in. Would it be okay to put that date in there? Yes, it would be fine. But if you want to skip it, you can. You just have to make sure it meets 2 conditions. 1, you use the name in your sentence, so it's not in the citation. And 2, there's no other source in between. Oh, I guess there's a third, and it all happens in the same paragraph. If she does it back down here, she's going to have to give the date again. Okay, so she sets us up. Let me do some more reading. Many myths about bipolar disorder stem from lack of education on the symptoms that make up this condition. Mania, hypomania, and depression can severely hinder decision-making and result in conflicts in personal and professional relationships. It's important to inform society about the effects of these symptoms to eliminate the myth that these symptoms can be managed solely through willpower. Mania and hypomania are the main factors that dictate a diagnosis. NAMI, boom, there's her date, explains that hypomania is a milder form of mania, which is an extremely elevated state where the high does not stop at a controllable level. And so again, this is from the overview section. So we have author, date, and with the date, remember in your paper, we're only using the year. If you have more than that, that'll go on your references section and the section. So author, date, location. Notice here, she has the single quotes, the apostrophes around high. Pay real close attention when you check out the quotation mark instructions or video about that. How do we do quotes inside of quotes? So the original paper had this in regular quotes. When you're going to quote it, you have to put that in there. Okay. All right. During these episodes, it's more likely a person will make impulsive judgments and act unusually. NAMI says, and so again, look, still in her paper, still same paragraph. Most of the time, people in manic states are unaware of negative consequences to their actions. So author, we get to skip the date since it's right there, and overview section. And here, she changed this capital letter to a lowercase one. So when you go through the miscellaneous punctuation video or reading, that's where we're talking about brackets, how you can change things, make them either fit grammatically, show that someone else has made a typo, fix a typo, that kind of thing. All right, most people are unaware of the negative consequences of their actions. This concept is difficult for many people to accept, especially when they are directly affected by actions of someone in a manic state. In her interview, Rain Molina, diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 19, states, a manic episode can be elated. I can just be extra energetic and super chipper, or it can get dark. I can get impulsive. I can do wild things and leave my friends shocked. She provides insight on how this disorder can impair judgment and cause abnormally risky behavior. Now, notice that here she used the first and last name, and that's highly unusual in APA. We almost only use the last name, or if we are using a first initial, it's because we have someone else in our paper who has that same last name, so we give their first initial. Now here, she's not citing, I mean, obviously Rain is an authority on bipolar because she has it. However, she's not kind of one of these, it's not a source from a print thing that we're citing or anything like that. And so this is actually a personal interview. And writing down the basics, let me find the right place, says here, personal communication, interviews that you conduct, memos, letters, email messages, social media posts, and similar communications that would be difficult for your readers to retrieve should be cited in the text only, not in the reference list. Use the first initial with the last name in parentheses, so it gives you the in-text citation. Now, okay, that's the APA rule, right? And you would always ask your teacher, because some people do want you to cite them at the end. I actually let Danielle use this as a source, and I am fine with you using an interview of somebody who's qualified. So here, Rain actually has bipolar, and if you're using a different name for the person, you don't need to say names have been changed to protect people, right? Just use the name and go with it. Now, if you get to the point where you're doing hard academic scientific research, where you're working for, who you're writing for, we'll have very clear guidelines of how to treat that. Again, I'm teaching you in general. So I would say in general, yes, if you know someone, I could interview my sister about teaching in K through 12 in Texas, and she did that. And I would go ahead and put Jan Tooley. But here we go. We've got Melina Ray, and then 2018 personal interview by author. And so we just looked at how to cite an interview. Okay, I didn't bring it up here, but we can just go to, this says published interview. So if you are able to do something and you're like, well, that's not in the book, then you just say, okay, let me look at a few things and see how they're done, and let me do it that way. So author, date, what it is, right, interviewed by, and so you can see that Danielle followed that. Melina Rain, personal interview, that's what it was, and then interview by author. And if you're referring to yourself, you get to call yourself author. Please clear that with me, though, if you do want to use a personal interview, but I will allow you to use it for one of your sources. So if you want to do that, you need to start thinking about it. Okay, Depression is the extreme lows on the roller coaster ride of bipolar disorder that often interfere with a person's life. NAMI explains that although the symptoms vary with each person, episodes of depression can be so deliberating that people may be unable to get out of bed. And this is what you want to notice, this place where she integrates this quote into her sentence so that we're not just dropping it in. That will make you sound smarter than anything, so work on that. This state is the complete opposite of mania and can bring life to a near halt as a person fights to just physically leave their home or bed. Molina, and so this is the interview she did, describes her own experience in her interview. Depression is sneakier. Sometimes I don't even realize I've gotten depressive until I notice I haven't showered or eaten for days. She explains how overwhelming depression can be because she feels irritable and disinterested, which makes it difficult to focus on anything. She goes on to say, sometimes I won't leave my bed and all I do is cry because I can't see anything better for myself. This emphasizes the fact that suffering from bipolar disorder, those suffering from bipolar disorder cannot enjoy the same quality of life of people who do not, due to the debilitating nature of their condition. And so notice how, whether here she's quoting from her interview or she's quoting from another source, she's always doing that explanation after it. And that's really key. When you give research, make sure that after it, you talk about it, what it means. It's hard to imagine what the symptoms of mania and depression can be like without experiencing them firsthand. Even witnessing a loved one afflicted with bipolar disorder doesn't entirely paint a clear picture of the mental torment they go through. Molina does her best to explain her experiences with this condition. It isn't fun watching yourself do and say things that hurt the people you love and seem to have no power to stop it. Being stuck in your own head, seeing yourself ruin everything, not knowing how much is in your own life you're going to mess up or if you're going to end up dead. And so again, she talks about it. She and many others struggle every day to live a well-functioning life while suffering through the constant shifts in extreme moods of mania and depression. She makes it clear how difficult it can be to maintain healthy relationships and make sound decisions with bipolar disorder. So we've got author, date, and then, of course, we know this since it's a personal interview. This is one of the situations in which we don't have to have location. This is 40 or more words. So for example, when Danielle, and I have her paper open here, typed up the interview and put it in there, then what she did was, let me get down here to it. So she goes in and she types it up and she says, I wonder if that's 40 or more words. Whoops, just the words here. You can look down here on the left, it's 54 of 2,000 words. If you're using Google Docs or Apple or something, just ask how to do word count for a section, and you just highlight it. Then you enter. Oh, we don't want the tab, and then we're going to do the indent button and scoot it over. Now, this again, pay attention with the miscellaneous punctuation lesson, because here she's showing that that's not the end of the sentence, so she's got her ellipses. And then she's got the brackets to show she had put it in there. Here, this is indicating because you put those to show I, as the author, left some stuff out. If you've got these here, you can kind of see how, as she's talking, being stuck in your own head, seeing yourself ruin everything, not knowing how much in your own life you're going to mess up or what. This is getting that pace of the conversation, that those pauses and stops. So these are original to the actual interview. And then the other thing is she has the colon here because what do we have before this? To use that colon, we've got to have full sentence. Molina does her best to explain her experiences with this condition. Danielle doesn't have to tell us what those experiences are, but she does. So she puts the colon and then boom. Just remember, here we go. If you're going to use that colon, then before it, you've got to have that full sentence. So full sentence colon. If you're putting a colon in your paper, ask yourself, either is it a title and a subtitle, or do I have full sentence? And then boom, I would put the colon if I want to connect that quote to it. And you always want to connect. Remember, if you have any he says, she says, any of that kind of thing, point, quote, explain, argue, note, then that's when we're going to use those commas. So, all right. Okay. Stigmas associated with bipolar disorder significantly decrease the quality of life of those who suffer from it. Misinformation leads to false beliefs and attitude that spreads throughout society, causing many people to behave or treat those with this disorder differently than they would normally. This can create social barriers in all aspects of a person's life once they have been labeled as mentally ill. Stigmas affect both the perspective of others and self, damaging self-confidence and performance and creating uncomfortable social situations. All right, so that's just kind of summing up what goes so far and then moving us into the next part. One of the most apparent stigmas associated with bipolar disorder is in the workplace. Research shows that many employers would not want to hire someone who has a history of mental illness due to the misconception that their illness will affect their ability to do their job. However, Lelliot et al., so again, here we have Lelliot et al., so that's more than 6 or more, wherever they are, 6 or more authors, state, and here you want to make sure it agrees, because we're basically saying they. So would we say they states or they state? We'd say they state. So when you put it into your sentence, make sure you replace it with they and just make sure your subject-verb agreement is working. But here's author date, and then I'm not sure if we have location. State that usually employees who hire those diagnosed with a mental illness don't regret their decision. Only 15% of such employers reported it as having been a negative experience. And there's our location. So remember with location that we'll have, if you have a page number, give the page number. If you've got a section in a document, like an HTML, a web page or something, then you can put the section. If not, those are the two. You got page numbers, do those, and that's the easiest one. Don't avoid things with page numbers if you don't want to do it. It's the easiest thing. The section, and then otherwise, like with videos, interviews, personal conversations, that kind of thing, we're not going to have anything. So then you wouldn't have location. Okay, regardless, stigma still spread in the workplace, making it difficult to find a job and keep one once labeled mentally ill. The stigma prevents some people from revealing their mental history in fear they will be treated differently. These fears aren't fall off, according to Lelliot et al. Work colleagues tend to view mental illness as a personal failure. And so here we have as a personal failure. Oh, notice quotes. We're not done with the quote. Work colleagues tend to view mental illness as a personal failure. There's a quote in there, author and date. And many report being uncomfortable working with a person who has mental health problems. So in that quote was the citation. And one of the questions is, if you're going to quote something and it's got the parts you want to use the quote, it has a citation in it, do you put it in your paper? The answer is yes, you do. Okay? So you just copy, like if you're going to do, this much, you want to quote this much, then you just put that in there like that. Okay? So many people report being uncomfortable. A workplace should be safe and secure, a safe and secure place to be for everyone. Unfortunately, for those suffering from bipolar disorder, it could be the opposite. Meek describes this in her article in the Harvard Business Review. I believed work was not a safe place to be open about mental health, and the situation stoked my fear that my depression was a weakness, a source of failure, and a secret to be kept close to my chest. She expresses her struggle with stigma at work and offers ideas and her solutions to help fight against it. Stigma affects people in many other ways, such as finding treatment and personal support. Stigma and misinformation can make it difficult to seek help in the proper channels, leading to increased self-medication methods that are dangerous and make things worse. Molina describes how stigma exists even with the doctors treating her. Even doctors don't listen to you. You're just a drug addict or making it up or being dramatic. It wasn't until she was 24 years old that she found doctors who listened to her and found a consistent treatment plan that has greatly improved her quality of life. Finding support networks can be difficult with this disorder due to stigmas that make it hard for people without the condition to understand. Granello and Granello, 2011, both assistant professors of counselor education at Ohio State University of Columbus, provide insight on a few stigmas associated with mental illness. Many believe people are responsible for their mental illness, and that the inability to overcome those illnesses is based on lack of willpower. Some think those with a mental condition are violent and dangerous. With all this misinformation spreading around, society tends to shun those with mental illnesses, labeling these and making incorrect assumptions based on their condition alone. This makes it harder for those with an illness to find support from society. The idea that misinformation is a source of stigma is a recurring theme throughout the research given. Many of the myths are surrounding bipolar disorder and other mental illnesses that cause people to change their behavior toward those who suffer from a psychiatric condition. If society makes an effort to bust these myths by spreading reliable information on mental illnesses to the public, we can begin to reduce stigma and improve the quality of life of those who suffer from it. In their study, Novak et al. Found many participants indicated that directing members of their support networks to credible online health information helped to spread understanding and awareness of mental illness within their social circles and to decrease stigma and misinformation in the context of their own lives. So there again, here notice we don't have anything. First of all, Novak et al., we can say in their study they found, so we've got the grammar right. Novak et al. Found many participants indicated. We don't need a comma, we don't need anything there. We're just going one to the other. And then notice too, we have author, date, and location. The one thing to remember is that in the text of your paper, when you have a location, page number, section, in with the rest of your text, you'll have the citation and then your period. The only time you don't put the period after the citation instead of before it is when you have one of these long quotes. Be careful, avoid them as much as possible. You want to give information and discuss it. If you have long, big chunks of it, it just doesn't work with teachers. I've tried it. All right. Let's see. Research shows spreading information about bipolar disorder will help create better support systems for those afflicted by mental illness. Although misinformation isn't the only source of stigma, it is the easiest one to prevent because anyone can do their part to stop the spread of false ideas and attitudes toward mental conditions. Being aware of stigmas about mental illness is the first part of reducing their existence. To make progress, we must take action. Novak et al. Suggests creating a credible, centralized, safe, and stigma-free place online where youth can research mental health information about their experiences. They even created a bipolar wellness center website that provides many features to help inform the public and those who may suffer from this condition. The National Association of Mental Illness, so NAMI, she reminds us again, but she could just say NAMI is another informative website. I get why, spelling it out when she's directing people to the information isn't a bad idea. Is another informative website that provides information and resources from those suffering bipolar disorder and other mental illness, as well as help for those who struggle with a loved one who is ill. This organization also provides multiple opportunities for the public to take action against the stigma. Granella and Granello, 2011, state in their study that those students with broad and inclusive definitions of mental illness had more benevolent, less authoritarian, and less socially restrictive attitudes toward individuals who are mentally ill. By educating ourselves and others on mental illness and stigmas, we can work towards eliminating stigma and improving society as a whole. Even those affiliated with bipolar disorder or other mental illnesses can help reduce stigma by being open about their condition, speaking out against misinformation, and directing those who are misinformed to credible sources. Telling their story, instead of feeling stigma, will encourage people to seek help and make it easier for others to understand that bipolar disorder is an illness, not an attitude problem. There is no doubt that false information and stigmas exist about mental illnesses like bipolar disorder. There may be many reasons this is true, but one that is easily avoidable is misinformation. Everyone can do their part in the fight against the spread of misinformation, providing support for those who suffer from a mental condition in the workplace, speaking out against stigma and false beliefs, and creating credible, stigma-free sources of information available are just a few ways to help reduce misinformation and thus stigma. Educating society is the first step to improving the quality of life for those who suffer from bipolar disorder. And there you go. And then you press Control Enter and you have that references page. And she has all of her sources. If she mentioned it and used it in the paper, it should be listed here. And we know how to do that citation because somewhere it's easier just to go to the page. We go to the APA section. Oh, here we go. Go to the APA section, and after that little table of contents, we say, okay, I have a article from the journal, or an article from the web, or I have an interview, or I have a video or audio on the web. Maybe you're using a TED Talk like Ruby did in hers. Whatever it is, I have a music recording I want to use. And you say, okay, selection in an anthology. So I know I recommended one of these to one of you in the topic memo response. So what do? Last name, dates, initials, put the year, and if you have, you can look at other examples where sometimes they'll have year, date, just flip through and find one. Title in this, notice this part's in italics, page numbers, boom. Just like that. It is just look at it and copy it and look at it. I hope that helps kind of show how these things work together. There was one other thing I did want to point out. Here you notice she has Granello, and she writes out the word and. And when we have, where'd it go, 6 or more? Let's see, 2 authors. Notice in the, if it's in your text, according to Southern and Gordon, then use your words, make it longer. If it's in the citation, this is our shortcut. Then just use that little ampersand between it. So that's not, yeah, I think it's an ampersand. So use that between it. And then when you get to citation, do whatever they say there. That's what I do. I don't remember it. I just got to do what they say. So I hope that helps give you kind of a big picture of where we're going overall. I'll get this posted to the 1302 research webpage on kelli.ninja so that if you want to read through this, you can. And if you're worried about kind of the language and how to make it sound so formal, one of the things notice is that there aren't big words unless they're technical words. They're the needed word. So, know that. This isn't about like crazy inflated language. And the other thing is, read some of these out loud, whether it's an example from my webpage, just go to 1302 on kelli.ninja and click on research. Whether it's one of those examples, the one from your writer's reference, just read it out loud. And the more you read it, the more you'll get the feel for that language. The sample in the writer's reference, depending on which version you have, there's one about, we looked at a little bit of that, the obesity and treating it with medication. And of course, it's got the medical names and some medical terms. So that is more technical. But if you look at the rest of their words, they're not crazy. So the best thing to do, because we do not speak this language, it is a language we just generally only write, is to actually read out loud. And then especially before you're going to do some writing, read a paragraph or two of one of these samples, and then you get that sound in your head, and then say, okay, let me write sounding like that, but it's me. Okay? So I hope that was all helpful. I'll get this uploaded and then that essay uploaded and put the link in the YouTube video, the description below. So if you want to go read Danielle's paper without my interruptions, you can do that. So I hope it was helpful. Let me know if you have questions. Take care.